Happy Friday, everybody, and welcome into Hog Roundup with Tye Richardson. We wanted to start this with ESPN Arkansas's Tye Richardson every Friday, kind of go through some Razorback sports. Tye, I'm really excited to do this. I'm really excited you're here, and it's going to be a fun way to kind of just talk about whatever's going on in Arkansas sports and just kind of deal with the week that's been, and then as well as preview some fun stuff ahead. I'm excited you're here.
It's going to be a lot of fun, man. I know that you and I have fun at both Razorback games and outside of Razorback sporting events. So I'm sure this will be a fun little venture we get to journey on.
Yeah, it's going to be a blast. Excited to see where it takes us. Hopefully, we're talking about more wins than losses. But before I start, Courtney Mims has told me and threatened me to tell all of you to make sure to like and subscribe. Like this video and subscribe to the channel overall. Helps us grow, helps us bring you all more content just like this. I think what's on everybody's mind right now is the beginning of SEC play for Arkansas men's basketball. And you know, we knew going into this, the SEC slate was going to be a gauntlet. We've heard, 12, 13, 14 NCAA tournament teams potentially coming from this conference. But, you're never going to get an easy game no matter what. But starting with number one and undefeated Tennessee on the road is about as difficult as it gets. Arkansas is going to be challenged in a big way come tomorrow in Knoxville.
Jacob, you're telling me Jonas Adu goes back home for the first time since he left. You don't know about Nelly Davis and his wrist. You don't know about Jonas and him coming off the health issue from this week. It's crazy to me through 13 games, they have not had their full complement of the guys that they were counting on. And I wonder how durable they'll be in SEC play. Rick Barnes is a really good coach, hasn't had the postseason success that Tennessee fans want him necessarily, but this is just going to be a war tomorrow in Knoxville. And I just don't know. I hope I'm wrong, but I just don't know if Boogie Flan, Carter Knox, and Billy Richmond are ready for this moment. I know that they had success against MSG, against Michigan, but this is a different animal tomorrow in Thompson-Boling Arena.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth, honestly, because there's so many storylines when you think about this game. You mentioned Jonas Adu, but I think something that people really aren't thinking about is they know Tennessee is really uber talented, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But you mentioned the road atmosphere. Knoxville, Tennessee, I mean, this is a stadium. It's only North Carolina and Syracuse that seats more capacity-wise, right? This is a place that's going to be rocking tomorrow. And outside of the Miami game, we haven't seen Arkansas deal with road environments this year. It's been MSG, it's been Baylor and Dallas, it's been a preseason game against TCU, and Miami obviously having the struggles that they have. It's nothing against the Hurricanes. It's just not exactly what you think of when you think of a crazy college basketball atmosphere. That's going to be something new for a team that is obviously still learning to play with each other, but also has a lot of new faces, freshmen across the board. It's the type of deal that you worry about the game potentially snowballing, right, and what the environment potentially could do to them.
Yeah, Jacob, you're exactly right. You're going up against a veteran point guard. It's Tye Ziegler, who's going to have his unit ready to roll. Tennessee, that place, surprisingly, I didn't realize that Tennessee was also on the list with Florida and Kentucky as the only three teams that Arkansas doesn't have a winning record against in SEC play. I saw that in the game notes this morning. This is not what Cal, I would guess. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he wants them to get drilled to just kind of give them a sense of, hey, this is what it's going to be like. I don't know if any coach wants to walk into Knoxville with them as the number one team in the country. I know that Cal has technically beat them once before when they've been the number one team back in, I guess it was 2019. But personally, I don't think they're going to win this game tomorrow. I don't think they're going to cover either. I've been wrong before. But I just don't. I've had a sinking feeling as soon as I saw this on the schedule. I was like, this is not going to bode well for a true freshman point guard led team. That's just that. I don't like this matchup at all.
Straight pessimism from you.
I
can't say I'm far off where you're at, but again, you kind of went in the direction I wanted to go to. From the reason why I worry is this team is so dependent on Boogie Fland and the guard play that Arkansas gets, right? And what do you have when you're going up against Tennessee? You're going up against Tye Ziegler, who is a true point guard in every sense of the word, over 8 assists a game. But what does he do? He hounds you defensively, just like the entire Tennessee team does, right? And that, to me, is where I think potentially issues could start from for Arkansas from that standpoint, where if Flan can't get going or whatever it might be, that's where you really, if you are Arkansas, you would like to see the John L. Davis, first of all, healthy and playing. That would be the first step of that. But also the John L. Davis that you thought maybe you were getting in the transfer portal, the guy that scored over 18 points a game last year. That would be, if Arkansas has a path to win this game, it can't be what they've done so far offensively. You would have to get help from other spots.
Yeah, and he has to be able to shoot the basketball at a proficient spot, like at a proficient pace, which he's done at points this season. And you're like, you'll look at the box score, he'll be 3 of 5, kind of be in their mid teens, 13, 15 points. But I tend to think he's going to be needs to be closer to 20, because I just don't know how much offense of efficiency you're going to get from Boogie tomorrow. And maybe I'm making too much out of that matchup, considering what he was able to do against DeJuan Wagner in that preseason game. But they didn't have, I almost called him Hunter Dickinson. They didn't have another good guard. I'm forgetting his name. So Kansas was not at full strength. This Tennessee team is going to be hounding not just Boogie, but the rest of the Arkansas guards and really that entire team tomorrow. When you watch Tennessee, you have to earn every single basket. Yes. You're going to hear that from Carl Ravitch and Jimmy Dykes on the broadcast tomorrow. I know that Chuck and Matt Zimmerman will make allusions to that as well, or like comparisons to that as well, because it is just so tough to score on these guys. And I know Kenny Payne talked about that in the press conference on Thursday, Jacob. And I know it's one thing to say it. It's another thing to actually follow through on what you're trying to execute in a hostile road environment against the number 1 team in college basketball.
Yeah, and to go back to the guard matchup, I don't think you're making too much of that, just because that's where Arkansas's offense has started and finished when it's been successful this season. And also, I think from the Tennessee standpoint, I was listening to a little bit of their media availability, and their players were talking about, it's not like it's some big rivalry or something like that, but it was something I didn't realize is Tye Ziegler's from Long Island, and they didn't shy away from the standpoint that they talked about, hey, it's a big deal when you talk about where Boogie is from in New York, going up against a guy like Tye Ziegler from Long Island, and they brought that up on their own accord and said, hey, yeah, it's a big deal when you talk about guys from that same area, and I thought that was interesting. But you mentioned Kenny Payne. He also talked about just overall physicality level, and that is an issue where Arkansas, or that is a place where Arkansas might have issues as well, just in the front line. You know what Tennessee is going to give you, and Kenny Payne said, in order to prep for SEC play, to prep for the Tennessee game, you kind of have to practice like there's no refs. That's going to be something that Tennessee is going to bring, knowing that Arkansas, depth-wise up front, has had a little bit of issues so far this season.
Yeah, I think that phrase you just brought up, I kind of cackled at that a little bit, but he's right. I'm curious to see what whistle is given. I don't know if they've announced the game officials yet, or if I just missed it. But what kind of whistles tomorrow? Do they let them play? Do they call it tight? I know Arkansas is going to try to get to the line as much as possible. They attack the rim, but what does that look like in its first game, and not just this game, but the rest of the remaining 18, or I guess I should say remaining 17 games after this game in conference play. So again, like you said, Coach Payne trying to get these guys ready, as well as Cal and everyone else, that there might be a whistle too that gets swallowed tomorrow at 12 o'clock.
Yeah, Arkansas is going to have to be ready to play from a physicality standpoint. Hey, so we're sounding very doom and gloom right now, and I think for good reason in terms of what Arkansas. Yeah, if there's a path in your eyes for Arkansas to win this basketball game, what does it have to be for the Razorbacks in Knoxville?
Well, I think it's what you brought up earlier. If Nelly plays, John L. Davis plays, then he plays like the All-American guard he's capable of. And I think so what's happened, Jacob, you've watched this. It's like the majority of the time, the two guys that have the ball are Boogie Flan and DJ Wagner. John L's been off the ball a lot, and that was not what he did at FAU under Dusty May. So Cal, knowing that this guy, I know he hasn't been through an SEC gauntlet, but he's played a lot of college basketball. Does he put the ball in his hands a little more, assuming he's healthy? Don't know. Payne gave us kind of a nonchalant answer when at least that's how I took it. He didn't like just lock in, okay, he's playing. I was just like, it sounds like he might play. It sounds like he might not. I don't know. Yeah. But I wonder if he does and he's healthy, does Cal say, hey, we're going to run more sets for you with the ball in your hands? That's something I think that if they're going to win, I think, again, John L. Davis is going to have an outstanding game. And he has the capabilities to, but that's the scenario I can see playing out if it happens.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. It just has to be more of a complete performance from Arkansas. And when we've seen Arkansas at its best this year, it's been when we've seen the version of Jonas Adu that he looked like at Tennessee, right? So now going up against his former team, I mean, you need a big time performance from him. I think back to the Michigan game and MSG, the way that he was rim running, flying up and down, making an
Oh yeah.
impact on the defensive side. It was that game where you kind of said, okay, so that Jonas Adu still is in there. He's just been coming back from injury. Obviously, he has to be a big part of Arkansas's attack, offensively and defensively, as well, if the Razorbacks want to win against the Vols.
Because that Michigan team had the two 7-footers, and Jacob, you might have to remind me of the two guys' names. One was more of a 4 that could go inside, outside, and the other guy was the FAU transfer. But the guys that he's going to have to go up against tomorrow are just built like tanks. And so Jonas is going to have that energy he needs coming off, hopefully, a sickness and just his impact. The thing about him is he gets that double-double the other night where he was outstanding, didn't miss a shot. But like just his length. I know Big Z's 7'2", 7'3", and it's had the block shots he's had this year, but he's just not as intimidating a force. Jonas is a couple inches shorter, but he's just built thicker and he's just a bigger dude. And so Arkansas needs both guys to play well. And I know that Big Z's been dealing with that ankle injury, but really for Jonas Adu, for him to keep his emotions intact, because I know it's going to be an emotional day for him coming back to Knoxville and everything, and use some of that energy to motivate himself to have maybe the best game of the season thus far in a Razorback uniform.
Yeah, controlling emotions is definitely going to be a big deal. Jemai Meshack he spoke to the media for Tennessee, and he's very close with Jonas Adu. And he talked about, at least from the Tennessee standpoint, he hasn't been in contact with Adu. He said, I'm really excited to see him after the game, but that's when they're going to share some pleasantries. It'll be interesting to see if Jonas approaches it from that same perspective. You tipped it right off the bat. You don't think Arkansas is going to win. You don't think Arkansas is going to cover the 11.5 or whatever it's at right now. You got a prediction for me?
Yeah, I just think that Arkansas is going to get shell-shocked tomorrow. And I don't think that fans should fret. It's not freak out mode, but it's, as you alluded to, it's your first real road game. There were more. I texted three separate groups of guys that were at the Miami game.
Yeah.
There was a legitimate case that there were just as many Razorback fans in Coral Gables as there were Miami fans. So like, that's not going to be the case tomorrow. You'll have a few hundred maybe in Knoxville. I've got a friend that lives there that's going, but there ain't going to be a plethora of Razorback fans that make that trip. And I don't blame them, because it's not about the team and what can happen tomorrow. It's just the situation that you find yourself in if you're Arkansas. And maybe it's good for them. In the long run, I think it's good. You don't learn a lot from wins. Most coaches will tell you it's the losses. Hopefully they don't get beat by like 40, but I see it being about a 15 to 18-point loss tomorrow. And again, I hope I'm wrong, Jacob. I hope I'm wrong.
Oh, I hope we're both wrong, because that's kind of how I read it as well. But I think it's not a hot take. It's what everybody's been talking about with the SEC. I think what you're going to see very quickly is the importance of putting the last 40 minutes directly behind you and moving on to the next game. That is, if Arkansas goes in and pulls a shocking upset and beats the number 1 team in the country, great. You've got Florida and Ole Miss on deck, so you better move on. And if you go in and you get shell-shocked, like you said, and potentially lose big against Tennessee, you got to put that behind you and learn from it, because you have Florida and Ole Miss on deck. The SEC is not going to give you any breaks this season. It just is. It's going to be nonstop throughout the entire season. Should be interesting to see between Arkansas and Tennessee. Tye, before we go, I got to get a couple college football playoff thoughts from you. Just what have you thought overall from the 12-team bracket? You know why I'm bringing this up, but I'm just going to give you the floor a little bit to go.
Well, of the 4 teams left, I, like yourself, am going for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. As far as the 12-team playoff, I mean, they're having a lot of great games. Best one so far has been Arizona State and Texas, and that looked like it was going to be a blowout until
it wasn't.
Until Scatterboo just went ham and was fantastic. First time in 26 years, I think, at the Peach Bowl that a loser has been getting I can't remember if the offensive or overall MVP. Either way, I think that like the buys, the teams that came out buys are 0-4, and that could be a combination of, well, they were the conference championships that shouldn't have been there to begin with. They should have gotten buys. They're going to have to change this up. I don't know if the solution is to go to 16. I don't know if it's to not have automatic buys to the conference champions. What I do know is it's not going to stay like this, because while viewership has been really good, you have a chance to make it that much better if you actually have good, compelling games. And what you're hoping, I mean, you got the Blue Bloods, you got Texas, you got Ohio State, you got Notre Dame, and you got Penn State.
Yeah.
Now you just need the semifinals and finals to be great college football games down the stretch. Will they be? I don't know. I like Notre Dame and Ohio State to advance, but I say I've been wrong. I think I've actually got both these game rights just because I've gone chalk. I picked Ohio State to beat Oregon.
Yeah.
So just hoping for some better games down the stretch, Jacob, this next weekend and then I guess the weekend after.
Yeah. I'm with you. Same exact thought process where, it's been fun to see some of these games, right? But that's really the issue. It starts with and finishes for me with the seeding process, right? Where I'm of the opinion, and I know a lot of people don't agree with me. I don't understand automatic bids at all. And I understand that, we have to go there to a certain degree. For me, it was always, you saw it. If a group of 5 team was good enough to make the college football playoff, they would just be in the top 12 regardless. So I never understood that argument. This year, Boise State was number 9. They would have made it regardless, right? Where, people thought blowouts were bad this year. Last year, Liberty was 23rd. That would have been your 5th conference champ into the college football playoff. Ugh. They got beat by, I want to say 38. I might be having the math wrong, by Oregon in the Fiesta Bowl last year.
Yeah.
So that's where it starts for me. But, I don't think I'll ever get my wish on the no automatic bids thing. I just think that the seeding process, like you mentioned, just has to go a little bit different from the standpoint that if you look at the first round matchups that you would have gotten if you just would have seeded this thing out as 12 teams, 1 through 4. And I know people would have been upset at the fact that the SEC had 2 buys and the Big Ten had 2 buys. But you look down the first round matchups, they would have made a lot more sense and they would have been a lot more competitive, I think. And it would have built a bracket that also would have made a lot more sense, because I know you can't control where everybody falls seeding wise, but Oregon getting the winner of Tennessee and Ohio State being the number 1 team in the country, that's not great in terms of the reward that Oregon really got. But regardless, I'm hoping these semis go a little bit better. We'll see. Competitive wise, you know how I feel about that Notre Dame Penn State game, but I think that's going to be a competitive one. Both games I think will be interesting. Did you see Sark came out and he's taking the Kirby and Saban underdog route? He said he came out and he was like, we are going up against the best team in college football. And he was like, and we are a severe underdog in this game. That's what he said. So interesting motivation strategy from Sark there.
Texas hasn't been an underdog, at least in their own mind, since maybe 2005 against USC. I mean, I can't think of the last time that Texas fans would actually take that. And I say fans, their fans probably still think they should be favored in this game, even though I think Ohio State is clearly, based on their last couple of performances, showed college football that they are not a team to be trifled with right now. Ewers' health is so interesting to me because he has those 3 touchdowns, throws that interception that they just didn't need at all. Mm-hmm. Had that 4th and 13 play. I just don't know how healthy he is. And then there's rumors out there. I don't know. Maybe there's substance to him winding up at like an Oregon or a Notre Dame for a $5 to $6 million payout. I just that guy, he looks like he's got a hose, and then his just durability seems to be concerned, Jacob.
Yeah, and it's interesting too from the standpoint he's not really a traditional dual threat in any. It's not like he's taken a bunch of hits, but he has struggled time and time again with staying healthy. But that portal stuff's been crazy with him, where just reports coming out that tampering's off the charts, $6-7 million. Being offered to him while he's playing in a college football playoff game. But regardless, those coming up next week, Thursday and Friday, I believe, the college football playoff semis. We'll see how it goes. We'll get a little chatter in next week when we talk. But that's going to do it for this week's Hog Roundup. That's Tye Richardson. I'm Jacob Morris. Looking forward to talking to you next week.